It is never a bad day to make a trade in Dynasty formats. That is why we are going to talk about our favorite buys and sells in Dynasty Fantasy Football. In today's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast, welcome in Lucas Wenzel, Tyler Plath, no Cameron. What excuse do you want to throw for Cameron this week, Ty, since we ripped you pretty hard for taking your dog to an appointment?
He took his turtle for a walk.
Okay, there we go. Enough of that, though. We have a very special guest joining us today to make up for Cameron's absence, and he will do more than make up for his absence. Jagger May of Football, guys, full-time now. You might know him as Fantasy Blue Chip over on Twitter. He joins us today. Jagger, appreciate you taking the time, man. I feel like this is a long overdue collaboration.
It is, man. I'm actually super excited to talk to you guys. Feel like you guys are one of the few people who don't like are like addicted to Twitter, so I don't like see you. Like,
I can't tell if that's a diss or like we should be doing more or
it's a compliment. It's a compliment.
No. There are some times where I'm like, you know what, I probably should post to Twitter more. And then there are other times where I see some of the stuff that's thrown out there and I'm like, I'm glad I don't post on Twitter more. Yeah. It makes me want to throw my head underneath the sand and never come out. So no, we appreciate you giving us some time here, man, talking about our favorite Dynasty buys and sells this offseason prior to the NFL draft. We'll be running through our top players that we want to invest in or guys we are looking to ship off ASAP. We'll talk a little bit about what we actually look for when we want to buy a player in Dynasty. It's just such a different landscape than your normal regular season redraft leagues. So we'll talk a little bit about what we want in buys and what we want in sells. Like I said, we'll actually talk about who we want to buy and sell, but let's not waste any more time. Let's dive on in. We'll discuss what we want to look for in buy and sell candidates. So the reason we want to do this is because not all players are created the same in fantasy football. It seems like a very obvious statement, but especially in dynasty formats, when age is such a big factor, when shelf life for players is significantly shorter, when you have longer windows to maximize and sell on players, but also you have shorter windows as well. So let's start with the players that we want to buy in dynasty leagues. And Jagger, I'll have you kind of kick the discussion off here. What are some of the key things that you look for when you're looking to invest in dynasty?
The biggest thing I look for is players that had a down year. I know that's pretty easy, but like who had a bad year and who had a bad year that wasn't their fault. That's a huge caveat. It's like, it's not their fault. Look at any Atlanta Falcon or any Commander or anything like that. Is if it wasn't for quarterback play or coaching or something, this player is good, so go and buy the dip. That's the number one thing. Two is if a player has an opportunity to have a better year. Let's say they're stuck behind someone, or I'm kind of betting or gambling that someone is going to leave in free agency or they're going to move or something, then I'm definitely going to try to get ahead even before free agency happens. Sometimes that doesn't work out in your favor, or it does. Depends on where you are in the T. Higgins argument. That's, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about, but that's my number one thing.
Tyler, how about you? What are you looking for?
Kind of the same things that Jagger had just said. I also kind of look for coach changes and schematic changes. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, where Arthur Smith is now out of town in Atlanta. Your offense is going to be better in the future because your system, your scheme is more tailored to your playmakers, right? So that's part of it. And I also just think too, you look at the talent of some of these players, right? Who is relatively untapped, who has been disappointing because things haven't gone their way. Those are probably the other two things I would add on to it. So it really is kind of this bigger jigsaw puzzle that you pull all these pieces in and you put it together to make your buy candidate.
Mm-hmm. And I would say younger, the better. That's always kind of my policy. But at the same time, there are certainly situations where investing in older players can be crucial, for your team. But maybe I'll save that question to after I ask, what about sells? So when we buy, we named some of the buy things, but what are the red flags when it's all right, we need to get rid of this player, we need to ship him off? Jagger, what are you looking for there?
You kind of alluded to it. Age is a big one for me, and that depends positionally. Like I wish I had like a chart. There's like a meridian of like when a player is old but so cheap where it doesn't matter, or they're old but they're still holding up too much value, and where that stands. So like a big player. Actually, hang on, I gotta fix the sheet because I just had a way better idea for a sell. I won't say.
We love it.
Yeah, but really that's always a big teller, and then it kind of works positionally where some people like buying running backs, and for me, I'm not some people. So like almost as soon as the season's over, every running back I have goes on the block. So that's just it's just the way I roll.
Well, and that's a good point too, because you do have different shelf life with a lot of these players. Running backs significantly short. You got 3 years maybe before you should really probably be looking to sell, if that. Wide receivers, you definitely have some more longevity, but I 100% agree there. The meridian that you pointed out is absolutely crucial, because it does depend by position. But knowing when the fall offs are with the age, actually seeing it on the field, or like we've already pointed out, if it's young guys who have opportunity, don't go out and sell them, because even though they disappointed, they still could have opportunity and a chance to bounce back in front of them. Ty, anything else that you're looking for?
So I guess I'll kind of open up this can of worms, because I did kind of get under Lucas's skin a little bit, because I called one of his favorite dynasty players a sell, and we had a decent back and forth about it, because it's the debate about selling versus holding, right? And the idea behind that is, okay, the player, real quick, just for context, is Garrett Wilson. Okay. And it sounds crazy right off the rip, but the way that I was looking at it is, how much higher can Garrett Wilson's value really get if we're almost valuing him, as a top 5 wide receiver in dynasty formats, when we have the likes of Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors coming up through this draft, and he's only got Aaron Rodgers for maybe 1, maybe 2 at most years. So again, how much better, how much higher can the value actually get? That's probably the one thing. And more times than not, it's not necessarily that you actually end up selling the player. You actually end up just holding them instead. But I think that's the way you can look at it, is, does this player's value in fantasy football get better moving forward? And if you think it's at the peak, you might want to consider selling and just trying to get what you can before maybe the value dips just a little bit too low for your liking. That's something that I also look out for.
That's a great point, and that's the most compelling argument I've heard to sell Garrett Wilson, because this is a very pro Garrett Wilson guy here. Like
speaking to one as well. Ty made a wise choice getting up this morning and changing his sell to a different player.
Well, hey, for I also just think, like, there is something to be said for the fact that I personally had Garrett Wilson in our dynasty league, and I made a trade that included him, and it went to Lucas. So there's a bit of spite, there's a bit of payback, I guess, in that, to try to maybe drop the price a bit to get it back my way. But that's all just part of dynasty football, is you try to make arguments to get people to really drop their value, so then you can go in and swoop in and bring them into your squad.
Yeah, it's a mental game. Fantasy's like as much mental as anything else. It's like, how do I take advantage of my peers?
So
it's kind of messed up when you actually think about it. You get down to the core values.
Cam is not here to defend himself, but I will say this: there are at least 5 trade offers sent out every single day just from that man alone, and it depends on who's going to. But he wears you down and he breaks you down, because you get so annoyed that you're just like, fine, I don't want to trade. I don't want any more offers. I'll just take the deal. And so then he is getting the best and younger players when people are just sick and tired of wanting to see another Cameron Lawrence trade offer hit their inbox.
I respect the hustle. I know a lot of guys like that. I'm an iron wall, man. I'll just say, like, I will just respond no, and then you won't hear from me again.
I will let you know if I'm interested when I respond with a counter or I reject almost immediately.
Yeah,
you'll know how I feel in that moment. But I do like Ty. All joking aside, like I do think you do have a point with Garrett Wilson. But just like Jagger, I am just so pro Garrett Wilson that you're not going to talk me into that because I just think there's too much upside there. And you could have put anybody other than Zach Wilson and Trevor Siemian at quarterback last year, and I think that Garrett Wilson would have had a significantly better season. But
yeah,
that's all hindsight 2020. We've already cracked open the worms of who we're looking to buy and sell. So let's just make this smooth and easy transition here to talking about some of our favorite players to buy and sell. Let's start with the buys. And Jagger, I'll have you kick us off here because when we were talking about guys you wanted to invest in, one, this player almost perfectly fits that narrative. And two, you're speaking straight to my soul with this player because I'm not ready to give up on him either. So who is the first player you're looking to buy this offseason?
Jahan Dotson. Like, I mean, it's crazy the narratives around Jahan Dotson. I guess I get that he had some touchdown cologne a little bit in his rookie season. Like, I understand it, but I'm a film grinder guy, so I'll start with that caveat. Is that I think he's an objectively talented player, and to back that up with actual chartable data, this dude's reception perception profile over on Matt Harmon, where he charts everything, is great. So this guy knows how to win. It's not just touchdown cologne. That was just gravy on top. And then on top of that, when Logan Thomas is your leading receiver for a lot of the year, there's something wrong with that. Like there's something wrong with that. So if you don't like Jahan Dotson, who's basically free right now, I just drafted him in like the 8th round or like something later than that. Like in this, like he's free right now. Go and get him. He is a 3rd-year player. Just think about Sam Howell, Eric Bieniemy, Ron Rivera. If you can go in with that mindset, then you'll probably be able to click the button.
I can't give up on him, man. It's not he's the perfect player of it's not his fault. I mean, again,
exactly.
you talk about him coming out of school. I mean, a lot of I think a lot of people were projecting him to be, a fairly successful slot wide receiver in the NFL, but he's winning all over the field, man, and he can get it done all over the field. Ty, I think I've talked to you into continuing to be a Jahan Dotson stan after he burned me terribly last offseason. Are you still in on Jahan?
I am. I should say I'm more in than I was on Commanders wide receivers because it really comes down to the fact that they are going to get one of the top rookie quarterbacks in this draft. So you're getting a major improvement at quarterback. You have Cliff Kingsbury as your offensive coordinator. I know people, it feels like there's a negative like perception about Cliff Kingsbury as a coach, but when it comes to him being a play caller, I think there are way worse situations to be in. And I know that the offense, yes, there will be growing pains and all that kind of stuff. So we're not talking about like a dramatic jump from where he finished last year to next year. But I think the outlook for him is so much better now because of the situation that he's in and with how everything should play out this offseason.
I'm not going to quit. I've fully bought into it. He burned me too bad last year, but there's too much upside there. I still have too much hope. He's still too talented of a wide receiver. Yeah, you could go invest in him for relatively cheap right now, even if you're not drafting him in startups and you need some depth at wide receiver. When draft picks have the most value is kind of right now when there's not any value assigned to them and people just want to accumulate those draft picks. I'd be throwing as many 2nd-round draft picks at Jahan Dotson as I possibly could. Because I think one of those would absolutely stick, and any manager that's sick of him from last year, I would absolutely go throw a second and see if I can get Jahan Dotson out of that. Considering we were talking about a late first for him last year, and the value only has gotten lower. So I'm going to go throw as many seconds as I can. Go for it.
I know in some of like the data-driven analysts, I could buy him for a 3rd, maybe like a crunch bar. Yeah, or something like that. Like, and one thing to really consider is like, again, this is why I say Dynasty is like just as much mental as it is like nuts and bolts. Is like if I have 3 seconds, I'm going to go try to spend one of those seconds on something that's a bird in the hand, whereas if I have one, I might not want to spend that 1 second on Jahan Dotson. So it's all about consolidating those picks. Because if you look at the hit rates after the first round, you're not going to have 3 hits in the second round. It's not going to happen. So go spend one, go get Jahan Dotson, go bet on that instead of betting on, I don't know, like Xavier Leggett or something silly.
Yeah, right. That's who you're looking at in the late second round at that point, right? Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. Ty, I'll kick it over to you for your first buy candidate. Again, we're talking about, we basically hit the hammer right on the head, or the nail right on the head, with who we were talking about investing in as buy candidates, because your player almost fits this exact same profile as Jagger's.
Yeah, and I think the only difference really is just a little bit younger, and there is top 10 draft capital that's associated with him. But Drake London is a guy that you might have to spend a pretty penny for because of all that stuff. But the outlook is so much better than it was with Arthur Smith. And I still laugh about it to this day because Drake London was one of my flag plans going into last year. That burned me quite a bit in most of my leagues. But look, I'm doubling down at this point. I don't think last year was necessarily his fault. I don't think it was necessarily a step back either. I just think he was just a victim to the situation that he was in because they just did not have good quarterback play. And you knew it was just going to be a long season when Arthur Smith came out after week 1 and after Drake London had got 0 receptions and only 1 target. And he essentially said, let the fantasy guys worry about that. We don't care, and Drake London doesn't care. We don't care about the stats. Yeah, that's never going to leave people feeling great about their investment in some of those guys. But look, Drake London, 22 years old, top 10 draft pick in the 21 NFL draft. No more Arthur Smith, and it's really the coaches that are now in town. Raheem Morris from the Rams, but Zach Robinson, also from the Rams. How do I say this? Zach Robinson, before taking a coaching job in the NFL, he was a quarterback evaluator over at PFF. So in some ways, like, the guy knows what he's looking for, and they've already committed to Atlanta. Just going and getting getting a quarterback within the top 3, if it's within the range of possibilities. I think it is. So everything looks better. You're going to get a new quarterback, better play caller. And I just think there really is no one else in this offense besides Bijan Robinson. Like, yes, Kyle Pitts is there, but like, I don't think Kyle Pitts poses such a big enough threat to really take volume or work away from Drake London. And I was thinking about it too. I was like, what could potentially like damper the outlook for Drake London? And it really comes down to, do they bring in another quality wide receiver? And I don't think that happens via the draft. At least they can find a number 2 guy in free agency, but I don't see him like a Malik Neighbors or a Roma Dunze. I don't see those guys going to Atlanta, even if they are on the board. Maybe Malik Neighbors, just because I think their play styles could really complement each other. But the other thing is they don't get a quarterback, which again, I've said they are going to do whatever they can to go get a quarterback. So yes, you are probably going to have to spend just a little bit more than you want to for a guy like Drake London, but I guarantee you that it's going to pay off down the road, because I think it's only upwards from here for Drake London.
Nailed it.
So yeah, you're in the same boat, Jagger, in terms, I mean, you brought up the Falcons as the primary example when you were talking earlier in the episode. So you're all over Drake London this offseason in terms of buy?
Oh yeah, and I had Kyle Pitts as a buy, but I switched it for something a little bit more interesting, because to me, I think it's a myth that there's too many mouths to feed to an extent. If you have a quarterback and an offense, then you're going to sustain drives long enough and consistently score points where there's undoubtedly going to be enough for everybody to eat. Because I keep hearing this excuse, well, Bijan's a number 2 target. That's a running back being your number 2 target is never good. And you even got to think about the 49ers who have CMC, who's one of the greatest pass catching running backs we've ever seen. He is not the number 2 target. Debo and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, he is just an added facet. So to me, if you could buy any of these guys, go and get it. You probably ain't getting Bijan. Drake London is someone that I'm trying to target. Like, let's say I have a young roster rebuilder. I'm trying to get Drake London as my wide receiver 1 because like I might not win this year or whatever. It's a good bet, but by next year, I'm probably going to be building a stud roster. So I'm all in on the Falcons.
In Dynasty, I'm willing to buy in. I think it's going to take me a year in redraft for everything to prove it. But, when we're playing a multi-year game in Dynasty, when these wide receivers have significantly longer shelf life, I'm willing to invest in Drake London. He's definitely a guy I would be going and targeting this offseason. I'm gonna switch things up a little bit here. I'm gonna switch positions. I'm gonna talk about a running back, which might go against Jagger's grain maybe in terms of wanting to buy or sell running backs.
Not this one.
I was gonna say this one feels fairly legit. Now I want to talk about Tyjae Spears, and I was trying to figure out where people have him, like consensus around the industry in their ranks. I've seen him as high as 14. I've seen him as low as 21. I'm going to say he's somewhere like, in that 15 to 20 range. I think that's probably appropriate for him. You might have to spend up a little bit because we all know running backs are not a dime a dozen. They are actually a fairly scarce asset in Dynasty, it feels like. But what I know for sure is that he is a second-year back I would much rather not miss out on if I have the opportunity to go and acquire him, right? I mean, we saw how many of these second-year guys exploded this last year. Rashad White, the running back 4. This is all in PPR. Kyron Williams in 13 games, a running back 7. James Cook, running back 12, and Pacheco 15. I don't want to draw like a second-year back correlation just based off of a one-year sample, but when these guys were given the keys, given the opportunity, Cam Akers got out of the way, Lenny Fournette got out of the way, Devin Singletary, God forbid, finally got out of the way. They all delivered last year. So, and there's plenty of signs here from Tyjae as well that the breakout could be coming this year. You look at his explosive run rate in last year, 5th in explosive run rate, 5th in breakaway run rate, 9th in targets, and 7th in target share as well. You love to see that, even playing behind Derrick Henry last year. He was 14th in yards per route run per PFF as well. So he flashed this skill set of an I can do it all running back, the ideal kind of bell cow back. We say the bell cow back is dead. I don't think they'll make Tyjae the pure bell cow, but he has the skill set to encompass what you want in a PPR fantasy running back, even half PPR fantasy running back as well. You also look at the Titans in general this offseason, 2nd most cap space, 7th overall pick as well. You can beef up the offensive line, go out to get a Joe Alt, who could be on the board at 7. Any of those top 3 guys would be great. It's not a great offensive line free agency class, but the quality Dynasty running backs, they come and go so quick, man. So I would much rather go buy in on a Tyjae Spears before the price absolutely skyrockets going into next year. Because, I mean, you think about what Rashad White or James Cook cost at the start of last offseason and what they cost now. I mean, it's drastically different. So the Tyjae Spears is by far one of my favorite buy candidates this offseason. I think he can do it all in a Tennessee Titans offense that's going to be improving. And even if he feels like you got Brian Callahan in there now, he feels like a Joe Mixon kind of role for this offense. I don't want to do that because it's an easy comparison, but Joe Mixon was a top 7 running back this last year. I think Tyjae Spears could have that kind of upside if he puts it all together this year. So I'm curious both of your thoughts. Jagger, you seem pretty excited. Ty, I think you're behind him as well. But what else are we loving about Tyjae Spears?
Well, you kind of, again, alluded to this. Tyjae Spears is a type of running back that I would like to buy. Him and Keaton Mitchell are up there because I think this is the cheapest you're going to get him right now until it's too late, if that makes sense. Because the magic number is 15 touches for guys with receiving profiles. If you get them 15 touches, they can get you RB1, high-end RB2 numbers. And then you look at the advanced stats of both Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears was a better running back than Derrick Henry. Granted, this is the whole Tony Pollard effect that, once you get more volume, your efficiency will go down, but still, he's in the ideal situation to, come up from 9 touches to 15, and I'm all in for it. And you mentioned Joe Mixon. I look at what Brian Callahan did with Chase Brown, kind of.
Yeah.
And I love I love Tyjae Spears doing a little bit more of that, because people keep asking me, he's like, will the Titans bring someone else in? I'm like, they should, like who's the RB2? I don't know, and I don't care. So they definitely should bring in someone. But again, most backfields are split. It's just, are they in an efficient offense? And I think that Tennessee, like you said, if they get more offensive line, Will Levis can take another step forward. Then I think that there's a lot on the bone for him.
And I think the other thing too with Spears, I can hear the counter argument for, the potential workload that Spears could get is just that, like, he's not the ideal size of a running back. And I would just push back on that and just say, like, how do you explain Kyron Williams? How do you explain Devon Achane? Like, these guys, yes, they do have some calling card to their game. Like Devon Achane, speed. Kyron Williams, contact balance. Like, there is something to these guys. For Tyjae Spears, it's when the ball is in his hands. Like, the dude just can make something out of nothing. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, look, 5th in yards created per touch last year. Like, the dude can make stuff happen, right? And so I think, again, I think a lot of people will say, like, well, he's not the ideal size that we are looking for in a bell cow back. And it's like, okay, if you can accept the fact that maybe it's not exactly like the traditional bell cow role, but he's still going to be plenty involved in this offense. He is someone that you definitely have to at least go throw in an offer for, just to see, because if you can get him, I can't see a way that you are a loser in the deal, if that makes sense.
Yep. You guys have seen Harry Potter, right?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay, so you'll get this reference. Like, and Prisoners of Azkaban, like the one black kid that was only in it for like one movie, and all he did was like quote bangers, where he was just like, it's like trying to catch smoke. It's trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. That's Tyjae Spears to me, dude. Like, that dude is like water. He is like wiggly.
That is awesome. I love that.
That's a top show moment right there. I freaking love that. That was great. That's perfect. That ties the bow on Tyjae Spears perfectly. Let's take a quick break. We'll hear from our friends over at Underdog. We'll bring it back for us. Oh, well, actually, I lied. Let's do a quick rapid fire round. I want to do rapid fire. I'm going to transition out of that because we do have a few more players we should talk about. I got too excited there. Let's do a quick rapid fire. Jagger, you talked about Kyle Pitts being an option. Who's someone else you're looking to buy here?
Bryce Young is in his Justin Fields era, and he just got a new coach who is good at fixing quarterbacks. So Bryce Young costs nothing when it comes to getting a young quarterback. So he's at that range where you could legitimately get Bryce Young for, if you got a spare late second spare late first or second, go get Bryce Young.
Ty, how about you? Your first buy. I agree with that. I think you can go, especially into Superflex. You kidding me?
Yeah.
They're too valuable. And if you could take a late first, any pick after a Drake May. I know Jane Daniels could potentially be a cheat code, but after those three, he's absolutely worth it. Ty, give me your rapid fire buy.
It's Jordan Love. I don't know what it is about the guy, but it might just be recency bias, but it's also just the fact that he ended the season so well. I mean, it was 18 touchdowns to 1 interception the last 7-8 weeks of the year. Like, there was a noticeable improvement in his play that I think he can be a true quarterback one in fantasy. He offers just enough rushing upside to sprinkle in a rushing touchdown every now and then. Like, he had 4 this past season, right? So I think the offense as a collective unit is going to continue getting better because they are super young and they are going to get older and better, more experienced. You are probably going to have to, again, kind of similar to Drake London in the sense that, like, you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more than you really want to, but Jordan Love proved a lot of people wrong in the second half of the season. And we all were too. I mean,
guilty.
Part of it is just because, like, we are big Vikings fans, but like, again, he proved so many people wrong. The dude is an absolute baller, and I want a piece of that offense because I know it's just going to get better and more, going to get better with more experience.
Imagine if you could get Joe Burrow in the second round of Superflex. That's kind of what's happening right now.
Right.
And now I'm talking about this out loud. I'm kind of upset at myself for not having more Jordan Love because I could have just drafted him. And
I mean, that's crazy. You think about how many of these top tier guys. I mean, I don't want to play a name game right now because this is technically rapid fire, but like how many I don't want to call it not upper echelon guys, but like those A tier guys that you could just go trade down for Jordan Love plus.
Yeah.
And I'd be just as content. Like a Joe Burrow is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
If you could get Jordan Love plus, or if you could get Jordan Love plus and you're trading away Joe Burrow, I'd do that in a heartbeat. That's a no-brainer to me. So I agree. If you're going to pay up, you're going to have to pay up, but in some ways, you might actually trade down if you do like a Joe Burrow to a Jordan Love plus. I would 100% do that. Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about Zay Flowers. I feel like he's kind of the forgotten child of last year's draft class, if you will, because everyone's so hyped up on Rashee Rice. Everyone remembers how bad Quentin Johnson was. And then there's just Zay Flowers, who was just kind of okay and inconsistent in the middle. But I mean, second half of last season, we saw him kind of see that second half rookie bump that we typically want to see from these rookie wide receivers. 17.3 fantasy points per game, 8 targets in 3 of those 5 games from week 7 to 12, 4 touchdowns in those games. So you boil in the sophomore leap, then it's literally him and Mark Andrews in this offense. No way you're trusting Rashad Bateman after he's kind of flopped over the first few years of his career. Odell Beckham, he's old. Nelson Aguilar, he can't catch. But all in all, there's room for Zay to grow. I'm not promising a top 12 finish by any means, but there's certainly room for him to be a top 20 guy with how he closed out last season. So with him just being him and Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers feels like the cheapest guy you can buy out of that draft class. And I've even seen a lot of people who would say they'd actually rather have Zay Flowers than a Rashee Rice kind of player, which is very interesting. There's a lot of people that are still high on Zay Flowers, but I think there are plenty of people who saying, nah, I'm good if you're willing to give me some capital and maybe a few more useful pieces as well. Let's wrap it out there. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with our favorite sell candidates in Dynasty Leagues. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back, and we got done discussing our favorite buys. Jahan, Dotson, Drake London, Tyjae Spears. Throw in some Bryce Young, Jordan Love, Zay Flowers as well. Let's turn over to the Dynasty Sell candidates. Jagger, I really, really like your first choice here. So why don't you kick us off here? Who's your first sell this offseason in Dynasty?
Stefon Diggs. I'm not saying that he's washed or anything like that, but I think his time as a premier dynasty asset is kind of over, in my opinion. It's hard for me not to see the Bills dipping into wide receiver again, even from what we've seen with Khalil Shakir, because it almost felt like Khalil Shakir took over Stefon Diggs' role. And Stefon Diggs became a worse version of where he was at. We didn't see much downfield. And I don't know how much of that has to do with the offensive coordinator change that we've had midseason. Either way, I just don't want it. And I would rather trade down for Stefon Diggs or trade up for someone else and pay than have him on my roster. And this is a case that, like, it's not so much getting out on value while it's high. I would just rather have more stable value elsewhere for me. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, because again, it's Diggs. He's been,
right,
a staple for so long, but this is what happens with dynasty assets. He's going to be 29. and like for me, I'm a dynasty guy through and through. It's, I'm starting to get those DiCaprio lenses. Like, you're getting old, dog. I gotta go down and get some youngins or something like that. So like I would rather go out and get like a Zay Flowers if you can. Flowers, I think, is going ahead of Diggs in some spots. Or the first guy I had, Rashee Rice. I would take Rashee Rice over Stefon Diggs, and they're pretty close. So that's just where I'm at.
I think for competing teams, some of them might be willing to take a shot. I sold Diggs in a dynasty last year. I got Terry McLaurin, Ramondre Stevenson, and a few extra pieces. I'm like, I would just rather accumulate. Not saying Terry McLaurin and Ramondre Stevenson were wonderful, but compared to what Stefon Diggs did for me in the second half of the season, I was very happy to take that trade. But I think ideally, you're right. I think I would rather trade for Zay Flowers, trade for a Drake. I think it would cost you more to get Drake London, but again, you're looking to acquire more youth that could be on the rise versus Stefon Diggs. He's going to give you the opposite trajectory.
Exactly.
Ty, how about you? What are you looking at for Stefon Diggs?
It was the guy that I almost put down as my buy. I would flip Stefon Diggs for JSN, and if you can get more with JSN, sweet. I don't know what it is about JSN. I know we're talking about Diggs, but it's like Diggs is he's about to enter this range of older wide receivers that if you hold on too long, everyone is just going to see, oh, he's 31. I don't want an old wide receiver on my team. So it's like, you got to kind of get ahead of it too. And yeah, it might be a tough sell for some people just because of how last year finished for him. But I think if at the end of the day, this is still a guy that has been relatively consistent in fantasy. It may not be the top 10, top 5 that we've seen, but if it's still top 15, top 20, like, I think there's still something to be said for something to be said in terms of value then for Stefon Diggs.
Yeah.
30 is that breaking point. The closer you get to that 30, the closer I'm out. And it might even be sooner than 30. I mean, when are we pinning that age as the fall off point for wide receivers? Because we've talked about that a little bit already of running backs, wide receivers. Like, where is that tipping point for these guys?
It's 29 for me. It's like, I don't want to see 30. Like I don't.
Right.
The only 30-year-olds that are going to be on my team are Travis Kelce, maybe, and a quarterback. Like, that's it for me. I know that, like, excuse me, let me say that caveat. Forget about the median. Like, a guy that I really like that I almost put as a buy here is Keenan Allen. Like, why would I want Stefon Diggs when Keenan Allen is free? Like, he is free, and he just had a stellar season. His style of play is an old man style, that Larry Fitzgerald tried and true style. So like, I would almost trade Stefon Diggs for Keenan Allen plus if I'm going to do that, so.
Well, he's a phenomenal one, because I was going to bring up, how do we boil in the old heads here, right? Of these 30 plus guys, like the Mike Evans of the world then too. Like, where does he fall in here? But Keenan Allen is another great one. I really like that. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. Who's your first buy? You're going the running back here, so maybe we'll get into the running back kind of fall off here, the age that we're looking at here. But sorry to spoil your position, but why don't we talk about Josh Jacobs, Ty?
Dude, I don't want to talk about my guy now. Like, you spoiled it too much. Even though you didn't even name the player, you spoiled it too much.
All right, let's move on. I'll talk about no. Go ahead.
No, I think this guy is a little bit different of an argument in terms of the age argument. I think it's a little more on the usage side. It's Josh Jacobs. And I think a lot of people are going to hear that and they're going to go like, what? No way. What? You're going to sell Josh Jacobs? And I get it. Like, it's hard to move on from these bell cow running backs, but I think Josh Jacobs is a prime candidate and a prime example of when it is the right time to move on from an aging and very, very utilized running back, right? He's a pending free agent this offseason, and we saw last year, in a little bit of a different circumstance because he was franchise tag last year, but he's not afraid to hold out for some money. And we saw that happen in the first 3 weeks. Then when he came back, timing, something just seemed off in their run game, and it kind of showed that. And then for the rest of the season then with Jacobs, it was then kind of like a roller coaster of like, there were some really good performances and then there were some really bad ones and stuff like that. So I'm not going to take too much from this past year though, because it was a wild and just turbulent year for him. I mean, you had Josh McDaniels get fired in the middle of the season. You then have below average and just bad quarterback play then. And it, defenses really then just made it tough for the Raiders to run the ball. I mean, Josh Jacobs faced the most average amount of defenders in the box with 7. Like, defenses were like,
That's
we'll put
insane.
2 safeties. Yeah,
That's
like we'll put 2 safeties in
that's-
the back. We'll just put 2 guys on the outside, try to beat us in the run game. And then he also then missed the last 4 games with an injury. And I also forgot to say the amount of his carry rate against stacked fronts, 4th highest in the league. It was really like, it was a really tough year for Josh Jacobs to really be productive with anything. So then when you look at some of these stats, like 25th in yards created, 49th in yards created per touch, 63rd in true yards per carry, you look at those and you're like, well, you would expect those against such a tough season in terms of how the defense was playing you. But I think just no matter how you look at it, it wasn't great, right? I just think for the season that he just had and the fact that he eclipsed 1,500 total touches this past season since 2019. Like, the dude has had a ton of touches, and he's only behind Derrick Henry in terms of touches. Like, the guy he's got some tread on his tires, I think is the point I'm trying to make. And so we're maybe looking at another year or 2 of like substantial work. And I just think it's downhill from there. Maybe it is downhill starting from right here. Even I think on most platforms, Josh Jacobs is the only running back outside of Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey, who are just premier talents at the position, to still be considered a top 15 running back, but be older than 26. Like, I think it's a tough pill to swallow when it comes to Josh Jacobs, because he's been so good for a while now on your dynasty teams. But I'm kind of predicting that we are at the apex of his fantasy performances. And I think it's going to start to slowly go down starting this year, maybe next year. I'd get out when you can, try to go get some younger running backs, or just try to go get some younger talent for your teams. Yeah, it stinks, but I don't really know how much better it gets from what we've just seen.
So I think the time to sell Josh Jacobs was 2 years ago. I mean, I know we had the explosive last year. Right? Hindsight's 2020, of course, right? As soon as these guys hit the end of their first contract, though, I'm looking to get out. That's where I'm at now. Ty, I'm with you. I think Josh Jacobs is a prime sell. I think you should still go on sell him. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I just wanted to transition us to like, when are we looking to actually sell these guys? Because sure, Josh Jacobs had his massive year. Could you really sell him last off season though, when he's going through contract disputes, and then even when he signs, franchise tag, it's only there for 1 year. Okay, do I really want to invest in a guy who's a 1 year? So I don't know, Jagger, what are your thoughts in terms of when you're selling these dynasty backs? Because for me, it's like, as soon as they're entering into that contract year, get off my team. I'll take a younger guy and take a shot on a Tyjae Spears.
That's where I'm at, man. I'm like, I'm an NFL owner through and through. I'm like, all right, man, you need some more money. Bye. That's kind of where I'm at. Like Jonathan Taylor, I still think he was cheap enough to where he could be a buy, but probably actually Jonathan Taylor is a perfect example.
Yeah.
This is the last year I would roster Jonathan Taylor. Like, I'd hope he does pretty well. He's gonna pop off. He's gonna win me a ship, and then I'm gonna release him back into the wild so I can go get Travion Henderson next year or something like that. Like that's what I'm trying to do, because it's like you said, running back are such a short window that he let's put it this way, he's not CMC. He's not going to be in that range. Right. Like we've already seen that I would rather get maximum value than be the guy who's like, trying to peddle like old kitchen equipment that I don't need anymore. That one friend is like, hey, every time we go over their house, like, I have this. Do you want it? They're like your parents. Do you want to take this home? I'm like, I don't have the counter space. Like, I don't want it. That's where you're at with running backs at some point. So I mean, I agree, and I think wherever he lands, because if you could go the other way with Josh Jacobs' stats, that you could say, wow, Antonio Pierce probably isn't that good of a head coach and doesn't run a very innovative offense. So he liked to pound the ball a lot. That's great for volume. So basically, I'm giving you your selling point. Here's your selling manual. You go point out the volume wherever he's going to land at. And let's say he goes to the Chargers or somewhere else like that. There you go. That's even better. Now better. You got even a bigger premium on there. Go sell him again or something like that. I mean, to me, there are so many positives that he's an easy sell. And with the negatives, it's even easier for you not to feel so bad once you let him go. If that makes sense.
Yeah, he's like the perfect person that should fit into this category of like,
yeah,
it might sound a little bit obvious, or you might be like, oh my gosh, wait, hold on, I'm looking at all these positive metrics, or these signs of hope potentially. It just gives you all the more reason to be happy to let him go, and like you said, go out and flip him for a younger guy, keep that team young. Mm-hmm. Which I'm going to be curious to hear both of your thoughts on my running back then, because look, I'm looking to get out on Rachaad White. I'm kind of done. I know it pains me personally because I was big on Rachaad White coming out of Arizona State. I acquired my fair shares of him across all of my leagues. He's 1 year before his contract year in 2025 is his last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I feel like he's giving me plenty of reasons to be a seller right now. First and foremost, it's not going to be better than the running back 4 than Rashawn in PPR. I don't think that's like a shock to hear. Like nobody's like, yeah, you know what, Rachaad White probably his best season at running back 4. I think that's pretty widely understood. But the efficiency metrics, they make me want to vomit. Okay, like 3.6 yards per carry, 40th in the league last year, 42nd in yards after contact per attempt. However much you want to weigh into PFF rushing grade, he was 43rd in that. I don't care if you like PFF, you hate PFF. 43rd isn't good when there's only 30 plus teams in the NFL. 47th in breakaway run rate. He only had 6 on 272 attempts. I mean, it's not good. Okay, this guy doesn't add anything. He's a great receiving back, yeah, but I find it really hard to believe the Bucs want to give him the second most carries in the league again next year if he's barely going to give him 3.5 per carry. Especially, this was wild to me when he faced light fronts at the highest rate of any running back last year. Still averaged only 3.7 yards per carry. If I can get anybody in the range you look on Keep Trade Cut, it's one of the most. It's probably the closest to what the people think about the value of actual players in Dynasty. If you can get James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, shoot, I'd even be happy to get Tyjae Spears plus for Rachaad White at this point. I would 1,000% do it.
I love Tyjae Spears plus. So
yeah, that would be. I would happily do that because I think that plus could actually be massive, and those are some needed depth pieces that you could potentially have on your team. So I don't know. Again, I'd rather be early than late on Rachaad White. And I feel like that's how I am for all running backs in Dynasty now. My paradigm, my mindset has really shifted around that. Of I'd rather be early than late, because once you're late, the value just absolutely plummets or it absolutely skyrockets. I would just rather be early, take my chances. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, I'll keep throwing seconds at him. That's fine until I get one that sticks. So I don't know. Where are you both at on Rachaad White? Because I could see some people where it's like, look, great receiving back in PPR. He gives you a safe floor. You can't find many of those in fantasy. I get that. I just don't think he's going to fall into the end zone 9 times again next year. And I don't think he's going to have 272 carries like he did this last year. Didn't even hit 1,000 yards. What are your guys' thoughts? I'm going to shut up now.
The whole Bucs scared me because of one reason, and it's Dave Canales. And let's say like all that mess and quagmire that you just said with Rachaad White. Now imagine that, except they have a worse coaching scenario. Like that's right. Where I'm at with. Like I have I'm actually looking at a roster now. I have really good teams: CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk, Sam Laporta, Flowers. I'm balling, and I got Rachaad White and James Cook. I want to yeet those off my roster for almost anything right now. To like, while I can, because like I was did some big brain energy, and I traded Ramondre Stevenson for Tyjae Spears and Keaton Mitchell and a third. So like the that's the stuff that you want to try to. I'm not saying I'm going to do that again, because like magic doesn't always strike twice, but that's what I'm going to try to do with James Cook. I'd rather have these guys. I'd rather have. Do I have him on this team? I want to go get Jerome Ford with James Cook or something like that. Like someone like if I can get Jerome Ford in a second or a third to someone who's a believer, I'm feel pretty good with that build of roster. And then I'm getting like Lucas was saying, someone whose value it only looks down from here. Like it doesn't look great. So
Ty, you want to buy Rachaad White off of me in our league?
I'll give you my 27 fifth rounder.
All right, there you
and
go.
my 26 fourth rounder. Right. Hey, whoa. Hey, I sprinkled a little bit better on top of it. Jeez. It's so, I don't think this is maybe the best way to look at it, but it depends on what happens with Mike Evans. If Mike Evans leaves in free agency, this offense will not be as good as they were this past year. And they weren't even really that good. Really, they really were not. Like that was still a 500 team. And I'm not saying that it's all defense. I'm not saying it's all offense, but like you lose a playmaker like Mike Evans, who was responsible for a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns on that team. That offense is going to take a step backwards. And I don't really want a running back in the prime years of his career on a mediocre / bad offense. Like and especially just after the season that he just had, I think because of that's why I'm just like, if I've got Rachaad White, I'm going to try to trade up and get somebody, because I think somebody is going to buy in on the fact that he is still relatively young, that he's coming off a very ultra productive year, even though it may not have been the most efficient year. They're going to see what he did and go, ooh, I could get Rachaad White on my team. And I think I'm kind of with you. I would sell.
Pretty soon we're going to get to a point where these guys come out, these, third, fourth, fifth round picks, they come out and have a dynamite rookie season. And we say, all right, see you, bye. Get off my team. We're not even going to worry about the 2-3 years afterwards. We're just going to get one good year out of them and yeet them. I mean, that's kind of what's happening here with Rachaad White, right? Got the load, got the work.
Interesting. I'm cooking right now behind the scenes. Rachaad White and Bryce Young are the same price on Keep Trade Cut. So don't mind if I do. Like
Jagger's out here. All right, Rachaad, let me set out a few Bryce Young offers here. That's wild.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Super flex, but still
this is why I say Keep Trade Cut is a tool that you use to exploit people. You don't use it as a Bible.
Right? Yes. The amount of time. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so like that's what I use Keep Trade Cut. People are like, I hate it. I was like, man, I love Keep Trade Cut. I talk people in the dumbest trades all the time.
Right. Watch how many picks I can pile onto this to get you to agree, or the one big player who's still got a high label or a high value on him, and it's like, but I don't know. Nobody values him like that anymore. So, I Keep Trade Cut is a tool. It is a very helpful tool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like Jagger said, it is certainly not the Bible. Please do not treat it as scripture in your life. That is one way to get screwed over constantly in your dynasty leagues. But a good tool nonetheless to at least provoke curiosities, get some trades going, get some ideas going for trades in your league. Let's do a rapid fire round to wrap it up here, fellas. Jagger, I'll have you kick it off here. I'm kind of intrigued by this one, but also I completely understand the logic behind it.
I love Jaden Reed, and he was one of my golden boys last year. But the price that he's at, and the way that offense works, I would almost rather trade up or down than keep him on my roster of where we're at. So again, that's not him as a player. I love Jaden Reed. It's just the way that he's priced right now, where I could, put a little mustard on it and then move up a tier, I'd rather do that.
I don't disagree with that, because I think that's where I'm at in terms of all the other wide receivers in Green Bay as well, with the Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs. It seems like Jaden Reed's the guy, but He's the most expensive one out of all of them. And frankly,
Yep.
yeah, if you can go flip that, I would 100% maximize on that if I could. I am with you there. Ty, how about your sell?
It's T. Higgins. And I'm not even like fully convinced that he's a sell. He might be a hold for at least a couple more months, because I'm very curious to see what Cincinnati does to bring him back. He's already on the franchise tag, so maybe he holds out, whatever that is. But like, I have recklessly speculated on past episodes, Houston should go trade for T. Higgins right now. They should. They should. They have a need for like a true outside. I mean, like Nico Collins is a big wide receiver, but I think T. Higgins is a much more bona fide outside wide receiver that if they want a big play, CJ Stroud to T. Higgins is a dynamite connection. So like if that trade were to happen, like then I'm not going to sell. I'm then going to keep T. Higgins, but I don't. He hasn't progressed the way that we've wanted him to for the past 2 seasons now, and he's dealt with some injuries here and there and stuff too. But I find it tough to really be that invested in Jamar Chase's shadow. Maybe that's too harsh. You get what I'm saying, though.
No, I get what you're saying.
It's not wrong. It's not wrong.
No,
it's
right.
Yeah.
So what side do you fall on, Jagger? We talked about this kind of. All right, what side of the T. Higgins equation do you fall on here? Which side do you fall on?
I hate rostering T. Higgins. Let's put it this way with a caveat. I love T. Higgins as my wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, but him and DK are that wide receiver 1 range. It's kind of like I just said with Jaden Reed. I would rather trade up for someone else or trade down for someone else and some plus than stay in like these are like purgatory players where it's like you don't feel great. They're not real needle movers on your roster. Particularly in T. Higgins' case, very inconsistent because he's not the guy that they're feeding. So I mean, I'm with him. And again, this isn't so much a sell for cheap. You might want to use him as a spendy piece to go get Garrett Wilson or see if you can get Drake London, like we just talked about somehow. So like someone might not do that, but use keep trade cut and make it work.
That says my side is way bigger than your side, dog. That's the truth. We'll quit talking about youngins. How about a 30-year-old tight end named George Kittle?
Yes.
Ooh. Hey. Whoa. I backed off of Garrett Wilson because I knew he was a favorite of yours. George Kittle is like the reason why I made a push in the fantasy playoffs this past year. You need to change your guy, sir. George Kittle is a treasure. He is someone I hold near and dear to my heart because that man carried me in the playoffs.
Ty's ready to fight about George Kittle.
Cut your emotions out of it for a second, dog. Like, cut the emotions out. Let's be practical.
Let's go letter Kenny, just rip off his shirt. Let's go, bud.
I'll do it. I'm only 20 minutes away. I'll be over in 20. Let's do it. I mean, the reality of George Kittle, though, 30-year-old tight end, he couldn't find the word consistency even if you opened the dictionary to the page and pointed right at
it. This is true, man.
It's true.
I'm just saying.
So hot and cold.
But the thing with George Kittle, why he's like still a great sell in my mind. One, because he's George Kittle. Everybody loves George Kittle. 2, he's debatably, the best tight end in the league right now. It depends who you talk to, but the talent, the skill set is all there. People are going to say, oh yeah, I'll take one of the best tight ends in the league because he's undebatably the best offense in football. In the San Francisco 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, he's always going to have this value and intrigue. But the problem is you always have regret when he starts slow, he explodes for 3 to 4 weeks, and you can't figure out what week you want to start him the rest of the season because he is so insanely hot and cold. So you're almost always dependent on a Debo or Ayuk injury in order for him to get that boost that you're looking for. So at this point, I mean, you're looking at guys in the same tier. We just did our Dynasty tight end rankings on our YouTube channel last week. David Njoku plus, happily. I'll go ahead and take it. And I don't even know if someone would even give you David Njoku for George Kittle. But if someone's caught up on that name and is willing to give you, in my eyes, George Kittle might still be a higher scoring tight end, considering, he led the league in receiving yards at the tight end position last year. I'm getting George Kittle off my team. He's too hot and cold. I would much rather just accumulate the assets and pick another hot and cold tight end to boom or bust for me, while I can go ahead and rack up a few additional picks along the way, or a few bench pieces along the way.
So real quick, I don't know a whole lot about the situation, but let's say Brandon Ayuk, because of all the, the drama of Brandon Ayuk, if he goes, is there then any interest in then holding on to George Kittle just to see what the offense becomes in the first year without him? Because there may be a need for George Kittle to step up more in the passing game.
No, I'm still looking to sell. I would maximize on that then. I'd say I can get more, and I would just be happy to move on then at that point. I think it's kind of like this Josh Jacobs thing, right? If Josh Jacobs goes to the Chargers, great. That's icing on the cake. I'll take more of your assets, please. That's kind of where I'm at with George Kittle.
Nailed it. That's where I'm at as well. I'm like, oh wow, I even have a better selling topic.
Right. You mean he's the number 2 now? Very clearly, we don't have to have this debate anymore. Gladly, you can have him. So that's kind of where I'm at. But
I'll say this too about George Kittle. Like, seems like he might be like the typical like better and best ball tight end, because the difficulty is then you got to find a more consistent tight end. But like, if you can get George Kittle's boom weeks, like, that's great. But in redraft and all of your other normal fantasy leagues, like, you're going to take the bad with the good. And I think the inconsistency can kill you. And now that he's 30, right? 31. 30, yeah. Like, I get why you sell him. I just got some personal skin in the game. That's all it is. That's all it is.
And another thing too is to consider is, like, if you're in an established league, the values haven't quite matched where you are with startups. Because I've drafted George Kittle in startups. By startup, I mean 1, and that's because I missed out on the tight ends I actually wanted. He's pretty cheap. He's going at like the tight end 8, and I'm willing to pull the trigger in a super flex. But because, like, in your already established leagues, people aren't really trading with that mentality in mind. So you could still get you could still say, well, George Kittle is a top 5 tight end, but unless they're actually doing rankings and thinking about it, he's not a top 5 tight end. So
couldn't agree more. It's definitely different when you look at it from a startup, but these long established leagues, it's more so kind of what we're talking about here, but then we sprinkle in the startup because it's fun to, compare and contrast where these guys are actually going in startup drafts now in relation to how we're actually valuing them in established leagues as well. Anything we want to throw in before we close out the episode?
No, man, this was a good one.
This was fun. Jagger, thanks for joining us again. This was a blast. We'll have you on again soon. Where can the people find you on the socials, though? Because we love the work that you do. Everybody in the industry loves the work that you do. Filling in on Football Guys, producing over there. Where can the people find you?
I'm on Football Guys probably every other week, if not. You see me over there, mainly on Twitter. I'm always wilding out, making jokes, doing silly goose behavior, but it's also prospect season. So I'm really in the weeds, doing a lot of scouting and stuff like that. So make sure to check that out. And another thing on Football Guys, our rookie prospect profile, there's 150 rookies. That is an unnecessary amount, but we did it just for you in case you care about somebody, and it's free right now. So make sure to go over and download that. Incredibly helpful.
Yes, please go do that. I have gotten my copy. It is, my goodness, so extremely helpful. So yes, please go do that. That is such a useful tool for your dynasty leagues as well. And I mean, you guys got some hardcore Devy dynasty guys over there who go into the weeds. The Jeff Mills of the world, the Kevin Colemans. I mean, they're phenomenal.
Jeff is telling me receivers. I'm like, Jeff, I don't care about that until 2026. Like,
I love Football Guys. Great. Yeah. I mean, with Dave and Alfredo, everybody of the sorts. We love you all over there. So we appreciate you giving us some time today, Jagger. We'll be back next week. I'll be out actually for the next 2 weeks. I will be physically out of the country. So Ty and Cam will hold down the fort for y'all. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for tuning in. Chat some Dynasty with us. We'll see y'all soon. Deuces.